If you used to have a beautiful romantic relationship and now you're afraid of your partner, you might be wondering, how did it come to this? What causes domestic violence? That's a question that a lot of people are asking, and it's a question that we're going to answer today. Hi, I'm April Hardy. If you're new here, welcome, and if you are returning, welcome back. I'm glad to get back into this type of content with you, although I am considering maybe changing it up and doing a little bit more on intimate partner homicide, like personal stories specifically. So let me know if that's something that you're interested in, because I think it would be a good idea. But I'm just kind of rolling it around in my mind. We'll see how that goes. First things that we're going to look at are factors on the abuser's side. So we're going to look at what violence is and some factors that influence violence or can create it. I don't know if that's a good way to put that, but that's what we're going to go with on the abuser's side. And then we'll look at things that make the potential victim more vulnerable to violence. So the first thing that we want to talk about today is violence. Like, what is it really? And it really comes down to four main purposes. And I'm assuming you understand the physical reality of what violence is: hitting, kicking, pushing, shoving, punching, pulling, grabbing, stabbing, shooting, etc. Right? Those are the physical things. We're going to talk about four things that it means, the reasons that it exists. Number one, it's an inappropriate attempt to handle emotions. I feel like this is maybe the most common one when you're not talking about like homicide. You're talking about just general violence, general being a jerk in some kind of a violent way. It's inappropriate handling of emotions. Often violence is the means used by someone to express feelings like anger, frustration, even sadness. This is why education is so important. And education in this matter may fall into therapy, trauma therapy in particular, because a lot of people who have domestic violence tendencies had trauma in their past. A lot of times because of violence that they were around, either directly at them or around in their family or something like that. But they learned bad ways, violent ways to deal with emotions. They never were taught good, healthy ways. And if they're going to change their behavior, they need to learn those things. We all have those feelings. We all get angry. We all get frustrated. We all deal with sadness, sometimes horrible sadness. And we have to know how to deal with it appropriately. Otherwise, you get violence or you get addictions, etc. All these negative ways of dealing with things that are just normal human stuff. Okay, number two, it can be used as a form of manipulation. I'm sure if you're watching this channel, that's not a surprise either. A tool that some people will use to get what they want or what they need, including control over a situation or a person. But I find the definition interesting, getting what they want or what they need. Again, this is a learned behavior. Just like you have a child maybe that whined a lot when they were little, like little, and they might have tried other tactics to get their parents' attention or the caregiver's attention, and the caregiver didn't necessarily respond really well. But when they whined, they were so annoying that the caregiver would finally give them attention. And then when they get older, they continue that whining behavior because they have learned that that is what gets them what they want and what they need. Violence is just a different form of whining, a much more destructive form of whining, but it's a different tactic, control tactic to get what somebody wants and what they need. Number three, it can be a form of retaliation. I feel like that's pretty self-explanatory. Number four, violence can be a learned appropriate way for an adult to behave. Generally, this is because they grew up in a home with violence and or they grew up in a home where violence was around. I have a hard time believing, even if you grew up with drug dealers and there was violence in that world, I have a hard time believing it didn't bleed into the home itself too. But they might have grown up believing that's just the way it is. men beat their wives, for example, or mommies strangle their husband, or whatever the case may be. But you don't know what you don't know. So if you're around that stuff when you're really little, you don't know that that's wrong or unnatural. It might feel wrong, but you don't yet know that that is not the way that the rest of the world is. And by the time you're old enough, some of them, to find out that's not the way the rest of the world is, they've already figured out a way to justify and rationalize it within themselves. And that would need to be unlearned too. And the majority of these reasons are reasons why just going to counseling and not specifically a batterer's program is not going to be effective for most abusers, because they need to unlearn specific things, specific beliefs that they hold that are responsible for domestic violence. So, other factors which can be causes of violence include influence of one's peers. So if they hang out with people that are violent, as well as cultural beliefs and traditional viewpoints. Many cultures have deep-rooted beliefs that men are superior to women. In some instances, those men may resort to domestic violence to gain control over their spouse or children. And if they come from a culture where that's okay, and they still live in the culture where that's okay, it's going to be supported. It's not just the mentality of that abuser, it's the mentality of everybody around them too, oftentimes male and female. Having a lack of respect for others, having a low self-esteem. I was going to say having a lack of respect for others ties in also to having a lack of respect for yourself, but I feel like that also ties into this low self-esteem. Abusers often attempt to mask their low self-esteem by degrading others. Experience of abuse or neglect, like I already mentioned, prior victims who become abusers often do so because they feel much anger and frustration related to the experience of having been abused. Also, especially if they experienced abuse as a child, it's a learned behavior that they believe is okay. Also, sometimes it's a control thing. Like they were so out of control before when they were the victim that they feel like the only way to have control is to then become the abuser. And they haven't learned that there's a middle ground where you're not out of control of your life, but you don't have to control other people in order to have control over yourself. Witnessing violence in the home, the community, or media, access to weapons, a desire for control. Domestic violence often occurs in relationships where one person has a desire to control another. The abuser may try to control the other person's social life, travel, money, etc. And low education levels. Not only do their low education levels contribute to low self-esteem issues, but it's also likely that with low education levels, they haven't learned good coping skills or conflict resolution skills. So not that everybody who's an abuser is stupid by any means. In fact, a lot of times they're very smart about certain things. But coping skills, healthy coping skills, healthy relationship skills, conflict resolution, things like that, I haven't had the opportunity to learn. Another one would be mental illness. Obviously, people that have been diagnosed with a mental illness, like bipolar or schizophrenia, for example, they may go through highs and lows that make it difficult to control their anger. They may become the aggressors and abuse others. This is especially true if they're not on medication the way that they're supposed to be. And I would extend that a little further. Yes, I agree with bipolar and the schizophrenia and having mental health stuff that you're not taking care of, you're not dealing with, including medication, if that is something that is necessary, like for schizophrenic people. But also trauma. Having experienced trauma, PTSD, let's say for example, if you have PTSD, then there's a much better chance of you having something called PTSD rage, which is like flipping a switch and becoming a crazy angry person. You know, I'm not shaming that. Generally, it's earned, in my opinion. Not that you have the right to be mean to other people, because you don't. But the fact that you have anger because you were so badly mistreated, you have a right to be angry. But, again, we gotta learn how to deal with these things in a positive and healthy way. Go break some dishes that you don't need or beat the crap out of something that's not a someone. There are ways that you can still get that stuff out, but you need to do what you need to do to take care of yourself so that you're not a danger to other people. It's common for people who act violently to have trouble controlling their emotions, all of their emotions. Also, generally abusive behavior can be attributed to false beliefs that intimidating others will gain the abuser respect, that they have the right to control their partner, or that using violence will solve their problems. Often, the opposite is true, but they don't know that. They believe what they believe, and you don't know what you don't know until you learn. Okay, now we're going to look at common risk factors that make a potential victim vulnerable. A potential victim being anybody. So if you don't think you qualified for the abuser part, the things that we just talked about, then you qualify for this automatically. So number 1, low self-esteem. Those experiencing abuse often believe that no one wants them or that they deserve what is being done to them. They don't deserve to be loved. That's a core belief. Therefore, they're more likely to try to endure the abuse in hopes that the abuser will change because they don't believe that there's going to be anything else or anything better for them out there. This is as good as it's going to get. This is the only person that's ever going to want me, and probably the abuser is also telling them that to reinforce that belief so that they won't leave. But that all really starts with a low self-esteem and this belief that you don't deserve to be loved. Maybe that stems way back in your childhood. In fact, it probably does. Something that happened there that has nothing to do with this potential abuser now. But it's there. 2, low education levels. People with low education levels who are being abused may feel trapped, feeling like they're unable to provide for themselves and or their children. Therefore, many stay in abusive relationships as a means of financial support. In addition to low education levels influencing your low self-esteem, in addition to low education levels potentially influencing maybe bullying or not being in the in crowd and things that would make you feel more stable when you were younger and more worthy. In addition to low education levels creating less opportunities for you in life, and like this said, less opportunities financially, but not just financially. When you have accomplished things, whatever the things are, things that you valued and you've accomplished them, it adds to who you are, it builds you up. And when you don't, it kind of makes you feel smaller and less than. And I think that that's what it's talking about. Plus, the most common form of domestic violence that is very often not talked about is financial abuse. It is the easiest way to control a partner and to keep them in a situation, especially when they have kids. And this low education level thing feeds right into that. Like it was talking about, if you don't have a college degree, for example, and so you don't feel like you can get a higher paying job, maybe you're looking at trying to work for McDonald's and raise 4 kids on your own and trying to figure out how to financially support yourself and your kids, and that doesn't look possible. So you stay. That's what that's talking about here. It makes you more susceptible. The more options that you feel like you have, the less likely you are going to be willing to accept abusive behavior towards you. 3, history of being previously abused. I talk about this briefly in the introduction of my book, In Case I'm Murdered. A lot of times people think, oh, I've already experienced abuse of some kind, so I already know this. I don't need a book like that that's going to tell me how to be safe because I've already dealt with it. I've already lived through it. But the truth is that when you have lived through it, you are more susceptible to it in the future, not less. Because people who've been victims before, they have sort of a scent. And predatory people know that scent and they look for it on purpose. Because we are more easily victimized. We take less work to beat down than somebody who's never experienced it before. Survivors of domestic violence often believe that they deserve the abuse. This mindset leads them to be less likely to stand up for themselves. They may even leave their abuser and then get into a new relationship with somebody who treats them similarly. As much as an abuser's messed up beliefs cause them to be an abuser, a victim's messed up beliefs keep them trapped in abusive situations. Beliefs like, I deserved what happened to me, I'm no good, I'm broken, I'm damaged goods, I am unlovable, I don't deserve to be safe, I'm a bad person, etc. 4. Cultural beliefs and traditional viewpoints. This also is a factor for potential victims. Many cultures have deep-rooted beliefs that men are superior to women. Now, for abusers, they can use that against a woman, obviously, if they're a man. But for women, if they hold that belief, they're more likely to submit to it. They're more likely to say, well, this is my husband. I have to respect his position. I can't leave. He's in charge. And that's not always accurate or healthy. I'm not disrespecting gender roles within relationships when they're both agreed on and they're safe and healthy. But that's not always the case, and that's those moments, that's what we're talking about there. Mental illness, people who have depression and other mood disorders are more susceptible to abuse. People who are sad, like depression, who feel like they're unworthy, who have been told their whole lives that they're not worthy or shown. Even maybe people with DID, which has very much a come here, go away attachment issue, often because of previous abuse, but they crave that relationship so much that they would be willing to bend over backwards for this person so that they could be with them. And then when abuse happens, then it would feed into, see, they're all bad and I knew it, and the whole move away, come here, go away part of DID would make somebody susceptible to that also. And then substance abuse, anytime that you allow yourself to be out of control of your body, you open up the opportunity for somebody else to be in control of your body. And if that somebody else is somebody that is trustworthy, that's fine, but oftentimes they're not. So I would definitely caution you against going out and getting drunk or using drugs and not having control over your body. I'm not saying I don't drink. I drink, but I don't drink that much. I've learned, unfortunately, the hard way with people who were not good people, that trusting other people to control my body instead of myself doing it is not a good plan. So if you can avoid substance abuse, I certainly would. And it's difficult because if you have experienced abuse before or other things that are hard and you don't know good skills for coping with things, just like on the abuser side, you can turn to substance abuse as a coping mechanism and then put yourself in more danger for more trauma, and it just becomes this cycle. So if you can avoid that, do that. Avoid that. Go get some trauma therapy, read some books, learn some things, watch some YouTube videos, learn skills so that you can deal with your anger and your hurt and your all of those hard to deal with feelings in a way that does not involve you losing control of yourself. Now, I just encouraged you to be educated about the risks of domestic violence and that that's going to help you avoid becoming a victim. This video falls under that education. It's a good start. I have lots of other videos on my channel that are around this issue, around domestic violence, intimate partner homicide, coping, these different things that are going to be helpful for you. I hope that you will go and look at them. I want you to be educated. I want you to be confident. I want you to be powerful in your life. Get educated. That's step one. Educated, then confident in your knowledge and your abilities. And that makes you powerful. Until I see you again, stay safe.